You're listening to Sustainably Geeky, the podcast for everyday environmentalists.
Hello and welcome to Sustainably Geeky, episode 18. This is Jennifer and I am here with special guest Chad Pregracke. Did I say that correctly?
You did. You nailed it.
I should have asked before. Sorry. It's just me today from our normal cast. The other two are out, but we're going to have a great conversation with Chad. He is the 2013 CNN Hero of the Year, a modern-day leader and proof that one person can make a difference. What started as one man's crusade at age 23 to clean up the Mississippi River has evolved into a cultural movement that had resulted in more than 10 million pounds of garbage being cleaned out of America's rivers. We now know that 90% of ocean trash comes from rivers, so we are stopping it at its source, and we need all the help we can get. The vision and leadership skills that Chad possesses has inspired 115,901 people and counting to volunteer their time and resources. Wow, that's like a small city or large city. So Chad is the founder of Living Lands and Waters, a nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving our nation's rivers and the only industrial strength river cleanup operation like it in the world. I'm going to let Chad kind of talk about what they do, but that was a really broad overview of what he started several years ago and how it's grown into this huge monumental organization that really impacts the entire country now. So Chad, would you tell us a little bit more about, what you do and why you started doing it, I guess?
Sure. Happy to do so. And thanks for having me on the show. So I grew up, just how this organization, Living Lands and Waters, started was I grew up right on the Mississippi River. Just my parents' house is right on the water. And when I was 15 years old, I got into commercial shell diving. That's diving for mussel shells in the bottom of the river. And you're in pitch black water all day, but it was how I was saving money to go to college. And then once I was in college, to stay in college, I did that. And I was camped out on all these islands of the upper Mississippi River. And I did that for 6 summer seasons and worked about a 150-mile stretch of the Mississippi River. And then I did some commercial fishing, and I also worked on barges. And all those different experiences, I kept seeing how trash the Mississippi River had become. For many years, people just dumped in the river, and because the current would just take this stuff away, out of sight, out of mind. And then all the floods that came down, or whatever the reason it was in there, there had been a lot of trash accumulating, and nobody was doing anything about it. And so for 4 years, I tried to get the state of Illinois to see if they would help me clean it up. And I didn't get anywhere. I had a lot of people tell me no. And so essentially I got the idea through a NASCAR race to get a sponsor, and I got one sponsor in 97, and I started just working with the little clamming boat, or the shell diving boat that I had, and filling it up kind of like a floating dumpster. And so now what's formed into an organization. And I never set out to start an organization, didn't really even know what that consisted of or what that was, but it was, once I started doing it, I loved doing it. And so in 1998 I started Living Lands and Waters, and here I am on your podcast. This is pretty cool. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So 20 plus years ago, you just basically got sick of seeing trash in your backyard and said, I'm going to do something about it. You just thought, I'm going to do a little bit here and there. Next thing you know, you've got more sponsors and people coming to help, and you've really just started this huge movement. That's pretty incredible.
You know what, though? The movement was already there. There just wasn't somebody focused on it. No one, it's really neat what, we basically remove all the garbage, all the plastics, thousands of barrels, thousands of tires, thousands of refrigerators. It's actually not thousands, it's 1,000 refrigerators. But anyway, everything big down to a pop can. Yeah. And so big and small, we take it out of there. But the movement was already there. I just, timing is everything. And I didn't have a grand plan. I just started and started working from my parents' house there, and just started doing it, and boatload after boatload. And I people started seeing me. I got some media attention and just helped kind of perpetuate it into something bigger. And you just, figure things out as they go, and you try some things work, some things don't, and just try to just keep moving forward is I think the key. But I always say I'm part of a movement for cleaner water. And but now with all the focus on the oceans and things like that, like the public is definitely more aware of trash in our rivers and trash in our oceans, and it's a big thing. So things have really come around since I started. There wasn't a lot of attention at the time, but there's a lot of people who cared.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting because a lot of times I think a lot of us see an issue in our community and we think, gosh, I'm the only one that cares about this. I'm the only one who sees this. And we just don't do anything because we think we're the only ones, when in fact, like you said, other people are probably just as frustrated as us, or desperate for change, and they don't. It's like nobody talks to each other and nobody gets together to kind of work on this problem, when it really only takes one person to kind of step up and say, hey, I'm going to do my part, and then everybody else thinks, well, I'm going to join you and see what we can do together.
Yeah, and again, I said I didn't have a grand plan, but like instantly, like other environmental groups and different people wanted to come out and help me, and I didn't realize how necessarily valuable that would be. But the Isaac Walton League, which is one of the oldest environmental groups, and Sierra Club and some other ones, wanted to come help, and I wouldn't say I blew them off. I was just doing it, and then they're like, where are you going to be on this Saturday? And I was like, I'm going to be here. So they came and joined, and it was amazing. And I met great people. We got so much more done than I could ever do. And I realized right then that this could be the key to really making a big difference. And so, just kind of figured it out that way. And yeah, so a lot of people doing a lot of good stuff. I'm just, part of a much bigger deal.
Yeah, that's interesting. You say that your piece is a small piece of the puzzle when it comes to water cleanup. So I guess let's delve into that. Why is keeping our waterways clean important? I know that might seem like a silly question, but for those listening, I mean, a lot of people I think take it for granted that you turn on the faucet and clean water comes out. But a lot of work actually goes into getting that water, treating it, and ensuring that we have it to begin with, because not all of the lakes and rivers out there are actually drinkable in their current state.
Correct. Like, for instance, the Mississippi River, there's 18 million people that get their daily drinking water from the Mississippi River.
Wow.
And that's pretty much been our main focus. But, it's one reason to get it clean and keep it clean. And, just if you just took the barrels that we're pulling out, like, thousands of 55-gallon barrels, and some of them have bad stuff in them. There's farm chemicals and oil and all this, and that's just one thing out of the many things we pull out. But and another thing too is what's really good about what we do too is, like, it gives people an opportunity to do something positive, and garbage is not necessarily the biggest issue that the rivers face. There's a lot of bigger problems you can't see necessarily or can't tangibly do something about. But I think getting the 100 and some thousand people out that have came out and helped out have really, I think it's not only the first step or one step in the right direction, it's two or three. So it gets people to care about it. They've got a stake in it. And now hopefully when it comes to the bigger issues, siltation and runoff and things like that, I think we're in a small way helping part of that as well. But and if people think your river's trashed because they see garbage, that's how they're going to treat it. I think it's a broken window theory that, like, Giuliani had said in New York, you got one building that's dilapidated, and then pretty soon the next one's, and I think that kind of goes for the river in some places. And people just, instead of thinking how beautiful it is and how wonderful it is and full of wildlife, they see barrels and tires laying everywhere, and they kind of like, oh, it's a dirty river. And that's kind of what, when I started, that was kind of the vibe. That's what a lot of people kind of thought. And, oh, you live down by the river, isn't it gross? You swim in that. But it has changed. And honestly, it's changed in a big way, just to give props to you and what you're doing, because of like the media and now podcast and social media is really, it's helped make the change in a pretty fast way, really. So change for the better.
Yeah. And you mentioned swimming in the water. I mean, recreation's a huge part of our waterways.
Yeah.
So that's an important reason to keep them clean, but also their habitat for thousands of species of animals and plants. And a lot of people like to fish, and a lot of people just care about those species just for the sake of them having a place to live. So I mean, obviously, there's so many reasons to one, not pollute in the first place, and two, up what's already in there and keep it that way.
If I can just add to that, like, so a lot of people where I live and in different places I certainly work, there's so many people that fish. So not only do we drink the water, but we also are eating the fish out of the river. And I've been places down south, like around Memphis, where this is no joke. People are literally sitting in garbage that was washed up there, and the stuff is still floating, and they're casting out beyond the layers of garbage. But they're not there for fun. They're there to eat,
Yeah.
And I mean, they're there for recreation and fun, but they're eating the fish. And so my brother's also a commercial fisherman, and so yeah, I think drinking the water and we're eating the fish is just two of the many reasons to keep it clean, get it clean, and keep it clean.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of those barrels full of chemicals in the water. I mean, you got to think the fish drink that. It ends up in their bloodstream and their meat. And then if people are eating that, and the same thing with like the microplastics we're finding in animals all the time. Yeah, everything we put in the water could end up back in our bodies. So for our own health, it's really important that we stay on top of that.
And not only the rivers too, but like, I have one of the world's largest message in a bottle collections, and the garbage.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we find a lot of them, and that could be a whole podcast in itself. There's some really cool ones, but not to digress. But my point is, some of those bottles travel hundreds of miles down, and it's just one example. Like, this stuff moves, and some of it winds up in the Gulf of Mexico coming out of the Mississippi River. So it winds up in our oceans. And I know last week, I think it was like 260 some pounds of garbage was found in a whale's belly. And I just, there's a lot of focus on oceans, but 90% of all the stuff that we, that is in the ocean came out of rivers. Now, not necessarily the United States, but certainly throughout the world. But so I kind of feel like in some ways we're catching it at its source before it's going into the oceans.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we do talk a lot about the oceans, and when you have something like a whale, something as big as a whale wash up on shore, it gets a lot of attention, but we don't think about those, non-point sources where everything's coming from and then collecting in the first place. So, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, point on that, like, the whale having that much garbage in it is actually something that kind of moves people, in some ways, and sometimes moves them for the better, because people are, just, they're mad about it and they're disgusted about it. Sometimes makes change, similar to when the Cuyahoga River in Ohio started on fire, and that's how the Clean Water Act came about. So it was a terrible thing, totally polluted river, but something good came out of it. And, so, I mean, just equating it to the bigger picture with what we're doing, getting all those people involved and having some solid results. Like, I feel like good things are happening out of something that's bad. And that's pretty much where my focus usually is, Sometimes I get discouraged, but yeah.
No, that's a great point, because I think I read in Sylvia Earle's book, The World is Blue, she talks about the importance of oceans, but how people are so removed from the ocean because it's so far and it's so vast, and it's just not in front of us every day like trees or other things. So bringing the attention to that with something big like a whale or a river on fire is definitely it's a terrible tragedy, but it's hopefully something like you said that we can use to motivate us to do good with. So, so I want to talk about, okay, you've removed more than 10 million pounds of waste and you're still going. So obviously there's still more out there after 20 something years. But how did we get that much trash in our rivers? I mean, I know for hundreds of years we've just been throwing things away, you know, like you said, out of sight, out of mind. But you know, what do you think caused that mindset, or why did people just think, I'm going to throw this in the river and then be done with it for decades?
It is like, you know, some of it's generational. If their grandparents did it, then their parents did it, and the kids do it. And that's just how things were done. People just threw it in the river, you know, in different places, but floods do it too. So it's not all intentional by any means, but at the end of the day, you know, we do produce a lot of plastics, a lot of garbage. We're a throwaway society, and not everything always gets put in its proper place or recycled, and it does make its way. You know, if it goes, you know, something flies out of the back of a truck, or somebody litters a bottle, it goes in a storm drain, winds up in the river, and it winds up somewhere. You're going to see it in most of the places I work. I mean, if I just give you, I think in about a 3-week period on the Ohio River, this is about less than 2 months ago, we did, it's like 110,000 pounds. And that really was, we only worked in about a 3-mile stretch of the river. Now, those are concentrated areas where stuff just deposits, but it kind of gives you a snapshot. Like, there's a lot of stuff, but the operation that we run is, you know, it's we can handle that sort of volume, but it's terrible that it's in there. It comes from different sources, and you know, a lot of times we have to just focus on trying to get this stuff out of there, because it's not an easy process.
Yeah, you have several barges now.
Yeah.
Correct. And how many, I guess, tons or pounds can those each hold? How do you kind of measure? I mean, do each one have a specific purpose, or can you just put whatever you find on any of them?
So we have 5 barges, 2 big towboats. We have an excavator for grabbing the heavy stuff with a 50-foot grapple. John Deere hooked us up with that. And then we have like 6 workboats, so 30-foot workboats, and then we have on one of the barges is our floating headquarters. It's like dorm style living. There's about 10 of us that live on there, and then we have a classroom, so we have 2 full-time teachers on staff. So that's one barge, and the rest of the barges, like, we'll use one for just tires, we'll use one for just scrap metal and appliances, we'll use, and then we'd have the basically all like the garbage bags, which is just our biggest barge, because there's so much plastics now with, you know, plastic bottles and things like that. So then we go back and we sort all that out as well, and then we have like a containment area for all the hazardous waste that you know, just there's unfortunately there's like batteries, propane tanks, the barrels, lots of TV sets, the old school ones with the tube, not the flat
CRT,
screen.
yeah.
Those all float. Bowling balls float and all that, so you just see them floating down the river a bunch, and you know, so each one is utilized for a different purpose, but it took a long time to figure out what works and what doesn't, and trial and error, and a lot of the stuff just somebody gave us, or we just fixed it up, so it wasn't like we just went out and bought it new, you know. So yeah.
Well, that's great that you had that support, or that, I think you mentioned when I met you in Austin, you did a talk there, that sometimes companies would just be decommissioning equipment and ask if you wanted it, right? And you had to figure out where to put it, but you'd say, yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, we have so much support in so many different ways, and we can always use more support, and you know, a lot of individuals support us, but certainly we have a lot of companies that support us, and yeah, just if, you know, people know who we are, and are, you know, it's like you just get out and ask people, and that's what you got to do, and if you don't ask, you don't get. So it's kind of one of those deals, and but half of it's just knowing what you need, you know. So.
Yeah. So what do you do with the stuff once you collect it? Do you have a specific drop-off point? Do you have a cooperation with different cities that you can kind of bring this waste to be processed, or how does that work?
It's tough because sometimes we'll fill up a lot faster than what you can't gauge a lot of times how fast you're going to fill up. So you don't know exactly where you're going to be unloading, which makes it really tricky. My wife usually takes care of a lot of the unloads, and it's very complex. You might have, I don't know, eight semis or something taking stuff to different places. And we have a good program with Bridgestone. Like, they'll take all of our tires, and we're loading like barge loads. I think we have 3,000 some tires right now. It looks like I took a picture. It looks like sitting on a mountain of tires, but they'll come and do that. But we're actually unloading next week, doing a thing with Mike Wolf and film crew, but we're unloading right now. We actually have another barge. We got so full we had to get the biggest barge you've ever seen, and it's holding a lot of our stuff. So yeah, everything we do when it comes to that is pretty complex, because you can't really plan where you're going to be able to unload. So it makes it a little difficult.
Right. So you got to be flexible, and hopefully your partners understand that and are willing to work with you on a lot of that.
And normally they are. And at the end of the day, a lot of times, you're not going to get any deals, and you just have to pay to get rid of it because you're full, and that's just what it is. And that's, it takes a lot of money to run the operation. And so just you gotta do it,
Yeah, which is why if you're so inclined, you can donate to their organization. It is a nonprofit, and all the money you can, as you can see, goes towards just keeping the boats afloat and getting the trash off of them.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
You've talked about some of the standard stuff you find in the water, but what are some of the weird things, like the weirdest things you found, other than maybe the messages in a bottle, which is pretty cool?
Yeah, no, it is. And actually, that's my favorite thing to find. That's like, there's like a trash pyramid when it comes to the crew. Like, and it's kind of like competitive a little bit. You try to outdo the next boat of what you find. But, when you're living out there months on end, sometimes you try to do anything to keep you kind of going. And
like a scavenger hunt, kind of.
Totally. And you get more, like you get more because you're covering more ground, whatever. Anyway, the message in bottle will be at top. The bowling ball would be second. Refrigerators would be third. And then, there's a whole host of different things like, we have found safes with the sides blown off of them from way back off of a steamboat, where somebody blew them up to try to get the money, whatever the contents was. You find a lot of those safes that are like century fireproof boxes, where people have them in their house. So if there's a fire, their contents doesn't get burned, but people steal those valuables and break them and throw them off bridges and in the water. ATM machines, motorcycles, cars, vans, tops of school buses. You just, there's guns. I mean, you just never know what you're going to find, but it's not all the time. But, you're typically dealing with the same contents, thousands and thousands of plastic bottles, plastic barrels. I mean, you name it. It's just, there's a lot of the random stuff,
Are you guys just picking up stuff that floats?
So, the river, unlike a lake or, other bodies of water, the river really can move stuff pretty good. So even like a washing machine, somebody will throw in the river. It literally, when the water's ripping, like in the springtime, it'll just roll down the shore.
When you guys are picking up trash from the water, are you pretty much just getting what floats, or do you have a way to kind of dredge the floor and pick up things that have sunk?
So to easily answer that question, a third of it is in the water, a third of it is right on the bank, and a third of it is like up on the shore higher. But everything was in the water. What happens is a lot of the stuff comes in floods, it like picks stuff up and it moves it, and it'll deposit it up like on the islands or different places. So, it is kind of broken up in thirds pretty much. Like the last couple months we've been working right at the water's edge and into the water a little bit, and that's where we did the over 100,000 pounds in a 3-mile stretch. So yeah, and in some places there's just floating garbage everywhere, and you're just picking it out of boats. So it just depends on where you're at and what level the waters are at.
Interesting. Okay, so you don't even have to really dig for it, if you will. It's just really kind of there for the taking. So where do you currently clean up, and do you have any plans to expand your reach? I know you're probably always looking at, where's the next place, or do you go back to kind of the same spots over and over?
So we try to stay in a place until we feel like it's cleaned up, like it's a noticeable difference, or we've made some good momentum with the people who live around there and they're trying to keep it clean. So some places we might have worked for 10 different years and went back and back there and, just kept building and cleaning until we had to move on. And we always are looking for new spots that need to be cleaned, and our equipment will be useful there. And in some ways there's no shortage of places to clean, but we typically work east of the Mississippi on sort of those bigger rivers. And like we might start off in Memphis, Tennessee and work on the Mississippi. And then we go up the Ohio. This year, we're going to go up the Illinois River, which basically is started in Chicago and ends near St. Louis. Or we've done some work on the Missouri River, but we also will sometimes go out east without the barges, but just all of our work boats. And we'll work in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. And so, it just depends on what we're doing and what needs to be done and the spots we found and all that. But it keeps it fresh. There's, checking out new places. It's an adventurous job, which can also be wearing too, but it's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I imagine you said you work with the communities that you clean up. So do the places typically, do they maintain them after you guys leave? I imagine that takes a lot of, locals staying on top of that, because you obviously can't be everywhere at once.
Well, we started what's called an Adopt a Mississippi River Mile, Adopt a River Mile. And so a lot of people, we try to push that as much as we can for people just to keep it clean. And so far so good, but we're always looking for more people to adopt different stretches. Yeah, we have we try to push our Adopt a River Mile, and so far been pretty successful. Always can be more successful, but just getting people to take that section, and that's really what the river needs. Like getting it clean and keeping it clean is different things. So you just need people going out there a couple times a year, once a year, whatever it takes, with groups of people and maintaining it, and just kind of conquer little by little.
So it's kind of similar to Adopt a Highway, Adopt a Park. You just your group or your family.
Yeah, I mean, I was just driving down the road. I'm like, Adopt a Highway. I'm like, well, why wouldn't we adopt a river? Not everything is super complex. I was like, that makes sense, and it kind of grew from there. And I think we have it's 180 miles adopted. I'd have to check on that, but it's quite a bit, and so yeah, pretty proud of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, if you already have a boat or you live nearby and you're on the water, you may as well take a day and or a few hours and pick up the trash you see.
That's what we hope.
I love that concept. All right, so we've talked about the stuff that you guys found and kind of the transformation. So, well, let's go ahead and talk about how folks could get involved. I know if people live near the places you're cleaning, obviously they could volunteer to come out, but if they don't live nearby, how can they get involved in this kind of work or even support your organization?
Yeah, and certainly, we need Living Lands and Waters. You can go to livinglandsandwaters.org. If you don't live near a river or can't get out there and think it's a worthwhile cause, we did 520,000 pounds this year alone. We use all the support, financial support you can give. But so livinglandsandwaters.org, check it out. And we got Facebook, Twitter. But anyway, the other thing is like locally, like there's a lot of organizations doing great work, probably close to where somebody's living currently. And I would say get involved with a local organization that needs your help. And not say we don't need the help, but local's great. And that's really how the world becomes a better place, is just acting local. I truly believe in that. So but we're not everywhere, but we have a schedule. It's not out right now, but will be soon, where we're going to be next year, and we cover a lot of ground. And but yeah, I'd say just get involved local. I guarantee there's an organization nearby that is probably doing good work and can definitely use the help.
Yeah, there's near where we live, there's like a Save Our Springs or a Friends of this waterway or that waterway. Yep. So look for things like that, or like you mentioned earlier, the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, the Ocean Conservancy. They all do great work in like restoring and cleaning all those waterways. So
and what? If you don't have a lot of money to give, maybe you have some other skill. Maybe you're good with computers or something. Maybe serve on a board of directors or just volunteer time just to spend time in the office answering phones. There's different ways, and every organization needs help. There's no question about it.
Oh yeah, every nonprofit. Yeah. I did notice on your website you guys have like an alternative spring break, and you have kind of group volunteer options. Do you want to talk on that real quick for folks that may be looking for something to do as a group?
So our alternative spring break is a great program. We invite college students from all over the country. We've had a lot of Texas students, California, Florida, Michigan, you name it. They've come from all over. We've had over 100 different colleges and universities come and participate. Each student, we've averaged it out. It's about 1,200 pounds of garbage they pick up in 4 days. We do it in March. It's the second, third, and fourth week in March this year. If you go to livinglandsandwaters.org, check it out. Go to the alternative spring break. That's a great program. And then we have different community cleanups, different places throughout the rest of the year. But yeah, we love help.
Okay. Yeah. So if you just want to take a week off or a few days and find out where they're at, show up and
look us up, email us, let us know, and we'll tell you the best place to go. And no, I can guarantee a good experience, and it'll be a worthwhile venture. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. You've kind of mentioned a few, groups that do this kind of work, but do you have any other resources or media that you would suggest for folks to look into if they want to learn more about the work you're doing, or just, water quality, water conservation in general?
I thought the River Keepers book, the first one, was really good. I really liked that. I learned a lot, and not to take you too far down in the weeds in that, but I thought it was interesting. Like in there it says the world's not destroyed, just boom, it's destroyed. It's one piece at a time, and then I equated that to what I'm doing out there. It needs to be fixed that same way. So that was a cool takeaway from that book. That's one of my favorite books. But just like the Sierra Club magazine, the Audubon magazine, like a National Geographic is amazing. So those are kind of things I'm into, and all of those guys have podcasts. They all have social media, but I just, And one thing about what we do too is like, I don't feel like what we do is just green. I feel like it's more red, white, and blue. Like, I feel like what we're doing, we as in anybody into the environment that's trying to conserve resources for future generations, or clean up rivers, or plant trees. I feel like that's all patriotic work. It's not, it's not a green thing. It's just an American thing is how I look at it. And like, I work with and live with on the barge a lot of really hardworking Americans, and those are the people that come out and help us out. And so I think there's different ways to serve your country, and I'm stoked to be doing that, and I know that wasn't a question, but no, I just wanted to make a point about that I think it's a good patriotic thing to do,
That's a great outlook, and what's more patriotic than taking care of where you live and making sure that future generations can enjoy it for that matter, because we're kind of cleaning up the messes of, like you said, that have been put in place over many, many years and generations. So we want to make sure that our future generations don't have to deal with that same stuff, and that, we can enjoy it while we're here.
Yeah, and just acting local is like, I never set out to change the world. I want, I think just changing your world. If it's something you don't like in your world, and the river was my world, and that's kind of how I got into this, and that's kind of just keeping it simple, and that's really how the world changes. A lot of people doing that. Was it Margaret Mead? Sort of. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're no, your story is very inspirational, and it kind of goes to show how one person can make a huge difference, as Margaret Mead said. And when you think about it, if we all try to do everything, we're not going to end up really making any difference, because we're all going to be overwhelmed. But if we each do something here and something here and something here, we'll find that we'll get the entire spectrum covered, because we have people all across the country and the globe. So definitely local is where it has to start. And if you feel like that's not enough, you can, of course, donate to other organizations and give your time to them. But don't get overwhelmed with the prospect of, I have to be everywhere at once, because it's really easy to do. I get that way too. When we see all these things in the world.
One thing I've been focusing on too is like, you don't have to go far to make a difference for wildlife. You can just do it in your yard. Mm-hmm. Plant trees like oak trees and bushes that the birds like. There's a lot you can do right there, and then enjoy the wildlife. Because if you do plant it, they will come. And it's really, I'm kind of pushing that too. It's just like, think small, but a lot of people doing small things make a big difference,
Yeah, it's really amazing. I started gardening this year, and I discovered bugs I never knew existed. but
hopefully they were
also
eating all
some of them. Some of them were, unfortunately, but I'm always amazed at, like, how did you find me? Because here I am in the middle of this, city, and I've never seen these animals or plants before, and they just pop up in the middle of my garden.
And speaking of that, I love trees too, and we have our own nursery, and we grow oak trees because they create more food for wildlife, and that's how I got into it, planting them on the islands of the Mississippi. Wow. But my wife runs the program, crushes it. She does a great job. She, with the help of the staff and lots of volunteers, we've either planted or given away 1,330,000 trees. So we love trees too. It's not our main focus as an organization, but it's something that, can help leave a legacy and give people the tools to make a big difference,
Yeah, trees are amazing and super important. And it does kind of work hand in hand, because a lot of times they, if they're planted strategically, they can help with runoff and erosion into the river. So
100%.
They're great filters. Awesome. Well, you have given me so much to think about, and I just want to make sure we've covered everything here. So actually, I failed to mention this at the beginning, but happy early birthday. Tomorrow, I believe, is your birthday, correct?
Yeah.
And happy belated Chad Pregracke Day. That was on December 1st, I was told.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's a big honor. It's cool. Yeah, it's in my state, Illinois, and
that's pretty cool.
It is really cool. No, just to be recognized, and like I'm always kind of uncomfortable with, awards and things like that. But just because I've met so many people like you, have you got any awards?
Not anything like that. I've been had write-ups.
You know what?
So
I think we're going to give you an award, but it is people like you. There's a lot of unsung heroes, and I have got a lot of attention for what I do, but it's truly a lot of people like yourself that start things and doing things, and you don't have to do this. This is such a cool thing, and so it's like I always feel a little bit weird about the attention or the awards, because I met so many great people. So props to you, and keep it up. And this is really cool. And if you like this podcast, you should tell 2 or 3 of your friends and get some more, right?
We'll Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. That's how it starts. You got to share it with everyone. But yeah, thank you for what you do. And I know you don't like the attention, but we appreciate you being on and kind of sharing your story with us, and hopefully getting more folks energized about doing some of the volunteer work we've talked about. So is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to talk about in regards to what, living lands and waters, or just kind of water quality in general?
No, I mean, mainly just the bigger stuff. If everybody had a cause, and just, and volunteers, so even a little bit of time every year. I know everybody's really busy, but the world truly would be a much better place. And so I just encourage everybody to do what they can and keep doing it and make it happen. Yeah.
Right. Well, with that, that's a good segue into our green life hacks, which my own green life hack today is actually, because it's Giving Tuesday, is to consider donating or volunteering with a nonprofit that speaks to a cause that you care about. So we've mentioned several in this podcast, but if there's a specific cause or a local organization that you're really excited about, then I would say give what you can. If you can give $5, $10, or $100, or if you can't give money and you can give your time, as Chad mentioned, every nonprofit in the world can always use more volunteers, board members, whatever your talents are, they'll probably be very thankful for them. And that through the end of the month, Patagonia is matching any donations that folks make, and they have a list of environmental nonprofits through their website that you can check out. So check that out for the month of December. You can double your impact that way and see who is near you that could use a little extra help. So Chad, do you have a green life hack to share with us today?
I would say support local. I just want to say that. Stay with that. That's good stuff. But I also want to mention too that Cliff Bar, the energy bar, started what's called In Good Company, and it's worth checking out. They have a website, but it's like all these great companies like Patagonia, different companies participating that are just like-minded, and it's a wonderful program, and we're part of it, and we're happy to be part of it. I want to plug for them, a shout out for them. So yeah.
Awesome. That sounds like a great organization added to the list. Okay, well, where can our listeners find you online, whether it's you specifically or your organization? This is your chance to kind of plug everything you want to plug one last time.
Just go to our website, livinglandsandwaters.org. We also did have we have a Facebook page and Instagram and just Twitter. We have it all, but I will tell you, I'm super low tech. So we have some people on our staff that we live with on the barge that do a wonderful job in keeping that updated. We got some great stuff. So check it out. And yeah.
Cool. Thanks. And I forgot to bring this up when we were talking about resources, but you actually have a book, which I bought and I have not read yet, but it's on my list to read.
I've heard it's terrible.
Well, no, yeah, it's probably not. No. So what's the name of your book? And
it's called From the Bottom Up. Put it out with National Geographic, and I'm currently working on my second book with the same guy I wrote the first one with. But it's just how I started this and what it's growing into, and a lot of trials and tribulations along the way, and boats sinking and no money and just every high water. I mean, every problem you could ever think of that's been thrown at us. And, but I really have been told it's a really good book, and I'm enjoying working on my second one. But yeah, From the Bottom Up, and you can email us and we could send you one. And but yeah, I hope you enjoy it. And
yeah, I'm excited to read it. And it's if you are interested in learning more about Chad and the organization, obviously an hour podcast isn't very much time to get into every little detail, so that's a great way to kind of learn more and see what happens behind the scenes, I guess, and how they got through all that.
We're gonna plug your program, your podcast as well on our stuff, because we want you to grow, and this is really cool what you're doing. I'm just can't say enough. So you keep it up.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. For those who want to find us, the Sustainably Geeky podcast, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcast. We'll post the show to YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pandora, and all the other normal places. We do have a Facebook and an Instagram. You can follow us there. And we are part of the Epically Geeky channel. So we also have Epically Geeky and Marginally Geeky. You can see we have a theme going. So if you're into that kind of stuff, you can check us there. Me personally, I'm on all three of the shows. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Het's Gonna Be Me. And yeah, that's where you can find us. Hopefully you enjoy the show, and we'll subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and as Chad said, please share us with your friends and family. Thank you for listening, and for everyone on the show, have a great rest of your day.